Hey, welcome to this edition of Maz's Musings, a somewhat abbreviated edition, but an edition nonetheless. I wasn't sure I'd have time to do a podcast because of the Easter holiday and some other things that have come up, and quite frankly, I'm not sure I was confident I could follow up last week's podcast, which featured my daughter Megan talking about Disney and Disney cruises. If you haven't heard that, I encourage you to check it out. But nonetheless, here I am because there was something that I've been very excited about, and I felt that I could take a few minutes to talk about it. And that is the NCAA Hockey Regional taking place in Springfield. And this is something that I have been very excited about. It's something that I've been looking for Springfield to host for some time. I think it was back in 2011 or maybe 2012, I wrote a column for The Reminder talking about how Springfield would be a good venue for this event. And it's been a long time coming, but it's finally here. Now, by the time this podcast comes out, likely the games will be right on us, so I just wanted to put a little thing together kind of previewing not only Springfield, but some of the other matches, because I think that there is some very interesting things to talk about with this tournament. Certainly Springfield is one of them. For the city of Springfield, I think this is a great opportunity to showcase the city and some of the things that it has to offer. I know that some of the local establishments are already gearing up for this. I've seen some advertisements for various events that are going to be going on in the city, and it's all just very, very exciting. So hopefully this is a good show for the city. I also hope that ticket sales are as strong as I think they could be, especially given the teams that are coming to Springfield, 3 Northeast teams and a recent national champion who is just a powerhouse in college hockey. I think that there's a chance for some really strong attendance at these games. And honestly, as a hockey fan, I just love good hockey. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the Springfield matchup. That's probably going to be the focus, but I'm also going to talk about some of the other matchups that we'll see in this tournament. This is all being done a little impromptu, so please forgive me for that, but I still think that we'll have a little bit of fun today. And here we go. All right, so I'm going to go through each of the regions, and I'm going to start with the Springfield region because not only am I based in Springfield, obviously, but I'm going to go kind of in chronological order for this. 2 of the regionals are taking place starting Thursday with the regional championships on Saturday, and then the other 2 are Friday and Sunday. So I'm just going to go through chronologically how these first round series are going to go. And we're going to start with Springfield, as I said. And we're going to start with Denver versus UMass. Now, that game is being played at 2 o'clock on Thursday. It's the first game of the tournament. And this is one of those matchups that has created some consternation among fans, specifically Denver fans. So UMass was a top 20 team all year, and they peaked at one point somewhere around the top 10. But they had a really rough go of it down the stretch, including a shellacking at the hands of BC in the Hockey East semifinals. So as a result, they needed help to get into the tournament, and they basically got it at the last possible moment. They secured the last at-large bid available. But because UMass is a co-host of the Springfield Regional, the rules state that they're automatically put in the Springfield bracket. So the natural fit for Springfield as a top seed was BU, but because UMass was there as the 4 seed in that region, it created a conference matchup that the NCAA wants to avoid in the first round. So they had to switch BU out. And in switching BU out, that brought Denver here. So it was the best option available, but it hasn't sat very well with Denver fans, and I can certainly understand. But I mean, rules is rules, but that's definitely one of the things that has been a talking point of this tournament so far, and even the process leading up to it. Denver fans often feel that they've gotten screwed in these situations before, and they feel that this is another one of those situations. as far as how UMass and Denver, match up, man, this is going to be a tall order for UMass. Like I said, they haven't played well down the stretch. They really kind of faltered against some top opponents. BC is its own thing. They're a cut above. But I think that this has the potential to be a rough one for UMass. Now, I will say UMass will have a certain element of home ice advantage because of the fan base that they have here locally. So how that impacts the game, I don't really know, but I do know that this is a very tall order for UMass. So the next game happening at 5:30. By the way, these times are all Eastern Standard Time. 5:30 is Maine and Cornell. And I hate to say it because I'm a New Hampshire hockey fan, I'm a UNH fan, but Maine seems to be somewhat forgotten in this whole Hockey East sphere. And they're no slouches. They were ranked 5th in pairwise for a reason this year. And what will really be interesting, though, is how they play on neutral ice. They were outstanding at home. In Orono, they were 14-2-2. But outside of their home arena, they went 9-9, 8-8 on the road, and 1-1 on neutral ice. So that will be really kind of an X factor for them. Cornell was the ECAC tournament champion, and winning that tournament actually helped vault UMass into the tournament. And they were second in the ECAC in the regular season behind the defending national champion Quinnipiac. Cornell just does not allow goals. That's their claim to fame. They allowed 62 goals in 33 games this year, which is pretty insane. So while this game may not have some of the gravitas that some of the others do with more marquee matchups in terms of name recognition, this is one that could be pretty interesting, a real grinder kind of game, that could go down to the wire. So I'm really interested to see how Cornell's style will play against a team like Maine. Moving on to the Sioux Falls Regional, which is also taking place on Thursday at 5 o'clock. That game features BU versus RIT. Now, BU is ranked 2nd in the country, and they're a phenomenal hockey team. They lost the Hockey East final to their rival, BC, pretty convincingly. But with that said, this is not a team that you can look at that outcome and just say, oh, well, they're overrated, or, I don't know how much they're going to do in the tournament. This was a very, very strong hockey team all year long. Now, RIT is not necessarily a pushover. They won both the regular season and conference tournament in Atlantic hockey, which was a one-bid conference. They're not one of the stronger conferences in college hockey, but they are a team that could, put up a fight. With that said, this is a tall order versus this BU team. And on top of everything else, BU fans are probably a bit salty about having to head west, the same way that Denver fans are salty about having to come east. The second game in that bracket is Minnesota versus Omaha at 8:30. Minnesota is one of those teams that I feel like is lurking in the bushes here. I mean, they don't seem to be talked about a lot, but they made the Frozen Four the last 2 years and lost the title game last year. I think they're being overlooked a little bit, perhaps because they had a quick exit in the Big Ten tournament. On the other side, Omaha is the host for the Sioux Falls Regional, and they've played really, really good hockey the second half of the season. They made it to the NCHC final, or they ran into that really good Denver team that I talked about earlier. They ended up falling in that game, but they've been playing very, very well the second half of this season. So this is a interesting matchup in terms of you've got a team like Minnesota that just has the pedigree versus an up-and-comer like Omaha. So on Friday, heading back east, the Providence Regional starts at 2 o'clock with BC versus Michigan Tech. Look, I'm just going to put it very simply here. BC is an absolute wagon. They lost like 5 games, I think, all season, and they ran through conference tournament opponents like a hot knife through butter. They beat UMass 8-1 before going on to face BU and beating BU, I think, 6-2. I mean, people considered that BC BU Hockey East game as a potential national championship preview, and BC simply smoked them. On the other side, Michigan Tech is that 16 seed that's the little engine that could. They didn't win a game in October. Not a single game. And they ended up rebounding and making the tournament. So I think that they deserve some credit for resiliency, but for them to have any kind of chance in this game, I think they're going to have to try and bog the game down and not let BC get their legs under them. And that is something that I would say is easier said than done, but I'm not even sure that saying it is all that easy, because I'm not sure that it's really possible. Next up in Providence on Friday at 5:30 is Wisconsin and Quinnipiac. As I mentioned before, Quinnipiac is the defending national champion, and they far and away won the regular season championship for ECAC. They had 10 more points than their runner-up, which was Cornell. They lost in the conference tournament, which they seem to have problems with that tournament for some reason. But they also lost the tournament the year before, and they went on to win the national title. So I'm not sure that that's necessarily a barometer for how far they can go in this tournament. Wisconsin, meanwhile, will not have played competitive hockey in almost 3 weeks coming into this game. So it'll be interesting to see how they respond. Both of these teams have outstanding goalies, so this is one of those games that could come down to who gets a lucky bounce. And we're going to finish up with the Maryland Heights bracket. Now, Maryland Heights is in Missouri, and this regional has gotten a lot of attention for a lot of the wrong reasons. It's not about what's going to happen on the ice, but where this is located. This regional has taken place at the, I'm not sure quite how to pronounce it, the Satan Community Ice Center, it's the practice facility for the St. Louis Blues. So the listed capacity here is 2,500 people, which is half of what the NCAA normally requires for regional sites. So naturally, fans are none too happy, especially because it's been reported that ticket sales are up over $1,000 on the secondary market. The Detroit News had a story about this, and their report said that the NCAA told them that the lack of bids from communities in the western part of the country was the reason why they looked past that capacity rule and awarded it to Maryland Heights. Now, that bid process was taking place during COVID, so it's possible that not as many people were bidding because of that, but it's easy to see why people are upset, and that the circumstances behind the bids doesn't really serve as much consolation to fans of Michigan State, North Dakota, Michigan, and Western Michigan who want to see their teams play. So, anyway, just found that very, very interesting about how that has all shaken out. And moving on to the games, at 5 o'clock on Friday, Michigan State is taking on Western Michigan. Now, Michigan State is coming off of a big overtime victory over Michigan. I caught the end of that game. It was an overtime game, and that Big Ten title game really was a fun one to watch. But yeah, Michigan State has a lot of momentum going in their favor. What's especially impressive about when I was looking at the teams and stats and things like that, Michigan State averages more than 4 goals a game. And they're doing that without a real go-to scorer. They don't have a scorer within the top 15. So basically, it seems like they just kind of overwhelm you with depth. And they've got scoring prowess at each of their lines. And also they have some defensemen who get in on the scoring. So they have a lot of different ways that they can hurt you. Western Michigan was quickly ushered out of the NCHC tournament, but it's an interesting matchup for Michigan State because Western Michigan's game is all about limiting opportunities. They only allowed about 25 shots per game on average. So you're looking at a team that just kind of like has layer after layer that can score on you versus a team that is just like, well, you can try to score on us, but we're just not going to give you the shot opportunities. So that's where I think Michigan's blue line scoring may be the difference. And the final regional is 8:30. That's Eastern time again. And it's North Dakota versus Michigan. And this is just one of those good old-fashioned Midwest hockey showdowns. These teams have met 91 times in the past, and Michigan holds a slight advantage with a 46-41-6 record in those matchups. Now, Michigan is probably still a bit sore about the way they left the Big Ten tournament, which could be some extra motivation for them, though I don't know how much teams need motivation when you're playing for a national championship. But either way, it's one of those things. But the big X factor in this game, I think, is actually on North Dakota's side, and that's the health of their goalie, Ludwig Pearson. Now, he hasn't played at all in the postseason since he injured his hand earlier in the year. So how a team fares in the tournament with a backup goalie, I don't know. You know, those are the kinds of things, those are the circumstances that really swing these kinds of games. You know, it's one thing to kind of be like, okay, well, I'm going to be without my starter for a period of time during the regular season and we'll just wade through it. You don't have that luxury in this one and done kind of situation. So what his status is apparently still up in the air. So we'll see who's between the pipes for North Dakota, but it's not a great situation for them. Anyway, so there's a little bit of information on each regional, whether you're going in person or you're tuning in to ESPN2 or ESPNU to watch some of these games. Either way you're watching, it's going to be some fun hockey. Well, hey, thanks for tuning in to this shortened edition of Maz's Musings. Like I said, I thought about skipping this week, but there were a couple of things about this tournament that I really found interesting and wanted to share with you guys, so I hopped on the mic for a few minutes to just fill you in. I'm going to have some fun episodes coming up, including, certainly some more Disney-related topics. I'm going to have Greg Cameron back in the near future, and we're going to talk some Boston sports and specifically some NFL draft. And along the way, I'm going to come up with some other topics, some other guests to really kind of mix this up and keep things fresh. So in the meantime, I hope everybody has a happy Easter if you celebrate. Also, be sure to check out Reminder Publishing's podcast, So That Reminds Me. We have a new episode coming out on Friday, which features myself and Tyler Garnett talking about some things happening in Western Mass news. You can always reach out to me on X at Maz's Musings. You can send me an email at mazasmusings@gmail.com. I also now have a dedicated Facebook page to this podcast. It's the Maz's Musings Podcast. You can just search for it on Facebook. I'd love for you to leave a review, to give some feedback. Everything that I'm doing in the hopes of creating a fun atmosphere for the listeners, and you're a big part of that. So as always, thanks for listening. I hope you have a great weekend, and I'll see you next week.